Hi everyone, Bendy Bono here, talking to you about who Thomas Aquinas was and why you should care. Well, St. Thomas is arguably the most important figure in Catholic and Christian theology outside of the writers of Scripture and Christ himself, of course. He is writing the Summa, the Summa Theologica, which is what we're going to be reading and going through, is arguably the most influential book of the Christian faith outside of sacred Scripture itself. So, as far as why you should care about it, well, if you're a Catholic like myself, you care whether you realize it or not, because the Summa has been incredibly influential on Catholic theology over the last 800 years. If you're a Christian who's not a Catholic, you should care because it's also been influential on your theology, whether you realize it or not. Even, especially if you're a Protestant, St. Thomas wrote before the Reformation, so his influence is very much felt also in the Protestant traditions. If you're not a Christian at all and are just interested in religious thought, you should care because, again, this is one of the most important religious works ever written. If you're interested in philosophy, you should care because it's one of the most important philosophical works ever written. If you're just a human being, you should care because St. Thomas has a great deal to say about your condition, and his thought has been influential whether you agree with him or not. So, in short, everyone should care about the Summa. It's that important of a work. It really is. It's that influential, that foundational to the understanding of Western theology, Western thought, and Western philosophy. Okay, it's a seminal work in all of those areas. All right, so who was St. Thomas? Well, St. Thomas was born in 1225, died in 1274. He was canonized in 1323, very, very recently after his death, relatively speaking. He was a Dominican friar and a priest, but primarily his work revolved around his intellectual pursuits. His two greatest works are the Summa Contra Gentiles and the Summa Theologica, or Summa Theologiae as it's often called. He also wrote commentaries on the works of Aristotle, who highly, highly influenced his thought, and various other treatises and books on a number of topics pertaining to both philosophy and theology. He had a vision a year before his death while working on the third part of the Summa, in which he claimed that he had revealed to him many divine mysteries. And at that time he stopped writing, and he said, as far as why he stopped writing, he's quoted as saying, "Such things have been revealed to me that all I have written seems to me as so much straw. Now I await the end of my life." Very profound statement from one of the most brilliant men who have ever written, and I think an important lesson on being humble with what we believe and what we read, even in something as great as the Summa, that this incredibly difficult and influential and important book is at the end of days just straw as compared to the beatific vision that St. Thomas was given a taste of. St. Thomas was dubbed the dumb ox, a loving but teasing nickname by his teacher St. Albert the Great, likely because of his large size and shy personality. However, St. Albert, despite this gentle ribbing, had this to say. He said, "We call this man a dumb ox, but his bellowing in doctrine will one day resound throughout the world." And of course, St. Albert is quite right. Thomas Aquinas is one of the doctors of the Church. Indeed, he's referred to often as the angelic or holy doctor in Catholic writing. He has been influential on numerous popes. He's been influential on virtually every Catholic theologian who has followed him afterwards. His writing is quoted in the councils and in the encyclicals of the Church. He is a foundational doctor who stands really head and shoulders even above the greats such as St. Augustine himself. As I said earlier, really his work is probably the most important and influential in Catholic thought outside of sacred scripture. It's that important. So, that's a bit for you of who we're going to be reading about, why we're going to care about what he had to say and all that, and I'll be back next time to talk about the structure of the Summa.